Thank you for staying with us. Welcome back to TSPN's News Desk. I'm Mike Spence with special guest Mark Bonini, the Chief Probation Officer here in Amador County. And Mark and I were just speaking about the population in terms of our jail population and how they stay in jail or come out and get onto probation. But there are some new programs and new developments that are taking place. I know that realignment was a couple of years ago. We just discussed a little bit of how that affected our populations here in Amador County. But we have another development that's coming up in July, I believe, and that is going to take our jail population and change the way that they go in front of the judge versus going directly to the probation officer.
And really what it is parole. They're offenders that they still supervise in the community. Those offenders used to go when they violated, when an agent determined that somebody violated either the terms and conditions of their parole or they somehow picked up a new offense. The violation process went before the parole board. That's no longer going to be the case, with some exceptions as some offenders will still go to the parole board, but they're going to start going to Amador Superior Court, similar to how my probation officers, violate somebody's probation, and we have to bring them before a judge to say, look, Your Honor, this person violated, this is what happened, so the judge can make a ruling. That's going to occur now on parole side. So it's anticipated that there's going to be some impacts locally, both to the jail, because that offender now could potentially sit in our jail pending the outcome of that case, but also to the fact that it could take a little while to get through court. You know, this is a new process. It's going to take some learning on our side, on the court side, on the district attorney side, the public defender side, of dealing with these new cases coming through court.
A little more accountability in terms of the judge reviewing it versus them just throwing them at the probation department. Yeah, we were talking during the break where I came from in San Francisco. They just used to take the jail population and they'd send them down to the Tenderloin. They'd just release them down there on Post Street near the Olympic Club, drive everybody crazy. But they'd all release in the same place and with nowhere to go, in the worst possible place. And then I lived in Redwood City. We were talking about they used to take them all and put them at the Garden Motel, which didn't have a garden. And it was just the seediest place, the worst possible place that they could release them. And they weren't releasing them. They probably had to report to probation. And as a resident of any community, I always used to wonder, wow, who's taking a look at these folks? And are we sure they were supposed to be put at the Garden Motel, and so many of them at one time? And, we have a little different situation in Amador County, thank goodness. And, we have programs that not only are these parolees having to be re-educated and go through the parole program with, but you had to take some education last year to put together a program called Thinking for Change.
Yes.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
What I did was, this was somewhat in preparation for realignment, but it was something that had been around a little while. Some counties were running their programs before realignment under Senate Bill 678, and that was a Senate bill that the legislature passed prior to realignment that really kind of proved to the legislature that local probation departments and the locals could do things and do things well with these type of offenders and extensively reduce recidivism. So with those monies that came to us to deal with this population, I made the decision to send two of my officers through the training to actually deliver this program to our local populations.
And you went through the training too as well?
No, I didn't. It's not something I would have. Yeah, I wouldn't have veered away from. But at the same time, I felt, based on who I have in my office, that these two officers stood out above the others as being two that could deliver the service, deliver it effectively, and really take ownership in it. I pretty much just kind of nudged them in the direction and let them go with it. And it's a program that's evidence-based, that's been shown to work and has been proven to work time and time again, both in populations in California and throughout the United States. We just recently, and it was in the local paper, graduated four offenders through the program, and have currently started our next group through the program. It's delivered in 25 sessions. They meet twice a week with my officers off-site up at the Health and Human Services building and engage in this program.
It's a long program, They started it at the beginning of the year. I guess they they became accredited with the program, and you guys have implemented it at the beginning of the year. Now you had your first 4 graduates.
Sure.
4 doesn't sound like a lot, but if you can successfully have 2 people
Sure.
get back in society successfully, that would be a great goal. And now you have another group that's just beginning that bit of thinking for change programming, and working with them and taking them out. Do you find them housing and jobs, or is it more just dealing with problems and solutions?
It's really the title is thinking for change. It's trying to get them to recognize that negative behavior, that negative thought process that they were engaging in, and ultimately thinking about the situation they were in a different way. And actually, once you think about it in a different way, actually acting in a different way when the situation comes up. I've received letters from those first 4 participants, both about the 2 officers that were put in place to deliver the program, how involved they were, how they were great instructors, and they would highly recommend the program. To me, saying, we're grateful that this program is here. It's made an impact on my life because of A, B, C, and D. Those are the kind of things that, they not only make you feel good, but it also makes you think that you made the right call and the right investment when it comes right down to it. So the idea is really to give them a different way to look at things, social skill development. If the need comes up for working on resumes and things of that nature, the officers do those types of things.
Couldn't the clerk at the Garden Hotel have helped them?
Maybe. Maybe.
Here you are, you're on your own, know where everything is. There's no change involved. And in terms of, I like the term thinking for change because, that's what you're looking for.
That's right.
Is that change, obviously. And when they come out, if you do help a few, and it sounds like you're having some success already, and that program is going to continue. That's a national program that you've actually invested monies in? Does it cost to train your officers?
That was the cost. It was that initial startup to put them through the training, and then there's some supplies and
Pretty
things like that.
worthwhile there, yeah.
I think so.
Oh,
but ultimately, this was one of the programs that I chose because there really wasn't a reoccurring cost. We get the room from Health and Human Services. It's part of the county system, so there's no cost there.
Right.
There is the cost for my officers to be away from the others during that period of time they're doing this deliverable, but it's worth it.
It is. Now, when you work with all these different people who come out of the jail system, are many of them juveniles? Because I know we don't have a juvenile hall in Amador County. What happens to the younger juvenile population?
Well, the juveniles are their own beast altogether. We don't have a juvenile hall. They can't go to jail in most cases. There's some exceptions where a judge could order them housed in jail. But we don't have a juvenile hall. I contract for beds with El Dorado County and have a great relationship with them, their chief, their staff there. It's pretty fluid. We can get our kids booked into that hall. We get them out, bring them to court. If they have time that they need to do where they're sentenced to a specific amount of time in juvenile hall, they can do their time there. I also have other contracts with other counties in case El Dorado County's population is also up. But what we're seeing more than anything else with on the side of juveniles, our numbers tend to be down right now, and I say that kind of knocking on wood. But the needs of the kids that we're dealing with seem to be up. We're seeing kids come to us with mental health needs that we had those in the past, but it just seems like there's the intensity of what's going on is much more prevalent. They're having psychotropic meds needs that need to be addressed. There's family issues, there's school issues. They're very complicated type issues, and they all intertwine with each other. And sometimes when we get that call that some juvenile has gotten into a fight at home with mom or dad, or there's some issue going on, we're not going to be able to solve that in the 30 minutes that we have contact with him in the middle of the night on a Saturday. It's going to take some time to weed through that. It's our job to determine whether or not that juvenile needs to stay in custody as that case is coming before the court, or if the juvenile can return home or some other place pending the outcome of that case so we can start delivering services. And that's what we try to do, is hook them up with services, find a way to not to have to detain them, but quite frankly, some kids need that. And then if their needs are beyond what our community-based organizations or our Health and Human Services department can deliver, we may have to place that minor. And if we place that minor someplace in a group home or a foster home, a lot of times those are out of the county. And as far away as Southern California, Northern California, if we try to keep them in the state. But currently I have a minor that's placed out of state. And my officer visits that minor every 30 days at least.
Well, having them, it sounds like, in terms of county need, having a juvenile detention center would be a very expensive thing versus housing them in El Dorado County and having them close by to bring them back and forth. Cost-wise, that must be a huge savings to be able to do it that way.
It is, and I think that's, years ago there was talk of a tri-county juvenile hall, and then there was some talk about doing a bi-county juvenile hall. And really, I think what it came down to, in the end of everything, was cost. My cost for my detention budget is around $250,000 a year, and that's a lot of money. And again, we're trying to make sure we have the right kids in the right beds, and because of that cost. But to run a juvenile hall, say a 20-bed facility,
right.
$8-9 million a year,
Right.
That's kind of tough to palate. And I could see our board possibly not moving forward because of those financial issues. I mean, right now, one of the big decisions before them is building a jail. And are we going to get to that point where we get that jail built? We're sitting on a jail that's getting older as we speak, and is still overpopulation. But our sheriff, the staff that's at the jail, all the correctional officers, they do a great job and make do with what they have.
Yeah, everything seems to be working out. Your budget isn't forcing you to do something that you're not capable of doing, and we're not overpopulated to the point of where, we're having to change things dramatically in a direction. It sounds like the direction that we're going in is pretty solid.
Yeah, and I mean, we're not there yet where we have to change direction, but the way the money comes to the county with regard to realignment, the stakeholders, the Community Corrections Partnership, chose to look at it and try to get the board to understand, and I think the board is looking at it as its own budget, its standalone budget, so it sits outside of all of our budgets. The idea being that if an issue comes up, we can address the issue right away and deal with it. If somebody needs housing, somebody needs something, we can deal with it and move on.
Well, it sounds like you're doing a great job dealing with the entire program and managing that, Mark. And
We're trying.
I appreciate you coming on
Thank
the
you.
news desk here. And we want to have our viewers stay tuned to TSPN's programming. We got more coming up, and I think that was a very insightful bit of interview.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for coming on once again.
You're watching Amador County's local television network, TSPN.